All right, thrilled to be joined on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast by Bane Pettinger, who is a well-known NHL player agent, also a strong advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. And pretty obviously, Boehner, we're having you on the podcast to talk about things that you've talked about a fair bit over the course of this regular season. And it's the players voluntarily opting out, or I use the word boycotting, their club's Pride Nights. And I remember going back to January when Ivan Provorov, at the time, the Philadelphia Flyers, decided that he was not going to participate. And you spoke openly and candidly about it, talking about your level of disappointment. Okay, well, that was in January, and now we've had James Reimer, and we've had the Stahl brothers take their position, and more recently, Lyubushkin with the Buffalo Sabres, citing concern over family and friends in Russia, their physical well-being if he didn't take his position. So where do you stand now based on where you were in January and the fact that we keep seeing this in the NHL?
You know what? I still stand that I think it's disappointing, and we've gotten away from what Pride Nights are all about, right? Frankly, they're not really about the players. They're about the community that's coming to watch the game and the fans of whether it's the Philadelphia Flyers or whichever for one night if they can relate to that rainbow or some in-game entertainment or whichever, and we're drawing in more people of the queer community to hockey instead of pushing them away. I think that's only good for everyone. I respect everyone's free choice, whether it's religion or ethics, whatever Russian fears. But as Berkey said there in a statement, I don't really understand it, but obviously I'm from my side. But everyone's entitled to an opinion, and I just see. I think we've gotten away from, we're talking about 5 players of 700 when, we're not talking about Jamie Benn that, made a statement, Connor McDavid, Matthew Tkachuk. I've got a Pride jersey right here of Sidney Crosby signed. That's a good friend, So we're letting the 5%, if even smaller than that, really get the squeaky wheel. And we're not looking to change people. We're not going to, but whether you're picking where you want to go for dinner at night or whatever, you're going to have people that don't disagree or don't agree. That's fine. But I just want to make sure that we continue to highlight the good things that are going on in the game. And, the Scott Laughtons and the JVRs that, hosted 50 queer youth that night and really made an impact. But yet we're talking about, the one outlier. And I think that's where we've kind of shifted away.
So by talking about the outlier, do you feel it hurts the impact of the night, or do you think it just makes it dissipate a little bit? Because in my opinion, people start losing focus about just what you said, which is what exactly the nights and the support are about. It gets dissipated, and I'd love to see a way can the league help? Can the groups that are supporting this help focus the message as opposed to letting this dissipate it out?
Yeah, I think it's a little chip away at it, right? But I mean, from Provorov, we're going to see more here. I think there's a couple more Pride Nights coming up. Some teams, the Leafs have theirs coming up, and I know they traditionally haven't worn jerseys. So that's, same with the Oilers. But even in the interviews with the Oilers leading up, Zach Hyman was very vocal. Connor McDavid was very vocal, but we're not seeing those interviews. So it's, we're kind of focusing on the negative, which I think is human nature. You can get a million compliments and, hey, great job here, great job there. You hear one Twitter troll or one person goes at you or one person speaks up and says, I'm not wearing the Pride jersey. And human nature goes, well, let's focus on that because, everyone's saying I'm on board. That doesn't clickbait and headlines. So yeah, it takes away from it a bit, but I'm always a glass half full type guy. I'm like, hey, you know what? There's some great things going on in this community. I've just got with Brock McGillis, a not-for-profit called Alphabet Sports Collective that Ray, you're a part of, which is really about empowering the queer community and saying, yes, you do belong here. So, they can have their voices and opinions and use their, whatever they want to say to not wear the jersey, but we're here and we're going to keep pushing for inclusivity and diversity. And if I need to be the face of that, then I'm happy to do so because there's a lot of people that don't want to step up. And when they see that, their favorite team or such a little gesture of wearing a jersey, they sit back a bit deeper in their chair. And I was in those shoes. I've only been out 2.5 years. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I'm an expert in this, but I know what it's like to be closeted and be around professional sports and hear language. And, I could only imagine that, I had a great coming out process, but I could only imagine if I was still in the closet and you're seeing, oh, this player's not okay with it. Now there's essentially a boycott now, and I've got over that hump of speaking my truth, and I'm fine to speak on it. That's why I'm here today. But, if there was someone that is contemplating coming out and is hockey a safe space for them, again, we go to that 5% negative instead of like I saw Daryl Sutter even said, great jerseys in Calgary. We'd welcome an openly gay teammate. Everyone's on board, but that's not getting the headlines. And that's where I feel we need to kind of shift a bit.
Yeah. And look, it's important to note too, when you bring up Brock McGillis, you guys are open, right? You're willing to help educate if the education is needed and is wanted. I mean, recently we saw Brock visit with the Chicago Blackhawks, right? Mm-hmm. And just tell his truths and answer the questions and things like that. That I would think, Bane, that has to be an important part of your initiative here moving forward.
Yeah, it is. And that's what it's all. That's how Alphabet Sports Collective came to be. When I was, pondering speaking my truth 2.5 years ago, I literally Googled gay hockey players and Brock McGillis came up. I talked to him for an hour and a half. My article came out in The Athletic with Pierre there. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's coincidence. 6 weeks later, I get a message from Luke Prokop's representation saying, hey, saw your article. So the humanization factor of, okay, it actually is okay, and the reassurance that, I can be successful in hockey. So now we have an ex-player in Brock. We have a drafted player in Luke Prokop. We have an NHL agent in me. And not that we're trying to form an army or anything, but like people are out there that are successful in the game that are openly gay. And we're just trying to push that, because I feel like hockey and sports specifically are just behind society a bit. If I worked at RBC across the street or whatever, I wouldn't have to speak on this because society is, hey, it's all good. But for some reason, hockey, we see these steps forward and then one step back, steps forward, one step back. And I think, it's just having these open conversations, humanization. I speak to OHL teams and junior teams here in Ontario. I'll go in, whether it's the Kitchener Rangers or Ottawa 67s, and just tell my story and humanize and educate and say, I was with Team Canada for 10 years and just kind of put a face to it, because I think that's important, or else we can do all the online checkbox training seminars we want. Mm-hmm. But unless you really pull on not the heartstrings, but humanize it and educate, then I don't think we're going to see progressive change.
It's I'm always curious about the frustration of the pace of change. So, I can think back to when I started playing Bane, and, that was in 1984. And, through family members and extended family members who live in the community and time, like, it just seems so ludicrous that this would even still be an issue to some. Like who cares who somebody sleeps with? I really don't quite understand it anymore. And yet I come from a time when an openly gay player would just not even have been a thought. Like, there was zero chance that could have been in the 80s. And there was lots of reasons for it, but that's what it is. Yet that's 40 years. And it's so slow. Does it feel slow? Does it feel like it's accelerating? Like, from your perspective, it doesn't matter what I think.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, I'm new to this space too, right? I'm not an expert. Like, I'm still learning. I lean on guys like Brock. I lean on, members of the community I even educate and humanize myself, of people of the trans community to, whichever, I can't put myself in their shoes. All I can speak to is that, I take the little wins, like Daryl Sutter saying he's okay with it. I never would have imagined 20 years ago that Daryl Sutter would say something like that. The players are speaking up on it. It's not just no comment. It's not, I don't want to go there. We're now seeing players actually oppose that and say, no, I'm on board with it and speak on it. It's not this hush hush taboo. If you would have told me, hey, in 2023, you're going to have 21 of 22 players wear Pride jerseys around 32 rinks, that's a great step for me, right? We're not going to change the outliers or the people with, bad, bigoted views or whatever you want to call it, religious, whichever. We're not going to change those, and we're not trying to. So, let's we are moving in the right direction, and I am personally happy with the progress. I think it shows we still have a lot to go, and even with from the teams, I like that they're handling it and not protecting the players, because it's important that they show that the San Jose Sharks, which are based in the Bay Area, which is one of the biggest communities for the LGBTQ plus, they from a business side, they can't be losing fans. They can't be ostracizing a group. So I'm kudos to them and the Panthers that go ahead with it and say, no, this is what we're doing, and this isn't what we stand for. So, when I see an organization stand up, I think that's great, because they could just say, oh, well, we don't want to go there. Let's have these conversations. Let's talk about it, because it's not going anywhere, and there is queer fans in the NHL, and I think we want to be bringing them in and not pushing them away.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is here, look, there's lots of speculation what the NHL, the Players Association might do. Maybe next year looks different with Pride Nights and special events, but it sounds like, why try and fix it? It's working relatively well. Continue to endorse, continue to support, and do what the National Hockey League has done. All right, let's switch gears here, Bane. Bane Pettinger joining us on the podcast. NHL player agents, some lofty players. I mean, you got the Ben brothers, you got Tyson Barrie. I mean, go down the list. So before we hooked up here, we were talking about the trade. Tyson Barrie from the Edmonton Oilers as part of the Matthias Ekholm deal, with Ekholm, of course, going to Edmonton. You were in Edmonton when that deal went down, and, kind of the ink stain guys like me, the insiders, we don't really care about the players. We just want to break the news. But you lived it firsthand, right? With Barrie and his family. I mean, the trade is a big deal, and there's upheaval that goes with that.
Yeah, we were sitting there. Actually, Mike Smith was over. They played Boston on a Monday night, and then Toronto on a Wednesday. So I was like, hey, I'll come in and, a couple good games for the Oil. And then Tuesday, we're out for lunch, come back. Here's a funny one. We come back to the house. We're sitting around with Mike Smith, and Smitty's phone goes off, and he goes, oh, they got Ekholm. Great ad for the decor. Goes, who's going back? And he goes, oh, you.
That's how he found out?
Well, Kenny Holland had called right before. He's like, Kenny's calling me. And I was like, oh, boy, this isn't good. If a GM calls for 24 hours and he's like, you got Ekholm. He's like, great. Oh, I'm going the other way. But, the one thing people don't realize is yeah, sure, it's a trade and it happens. And that's why trade protection is so important in a contract. But your life can get flipped upside down, in a matter of, 30 seconds. I'm sure, Ray, that. You get a phone call and it's, 5 minutes later, David Poile and Barry Trotz are calling saying, what number do you want to wear? Are you meeting us in Florida? Pack your bag, or on a 2-week road trip. Then I'm driving Tyson to the airport, swinging by the rink to get his gear. There's not even goodbye to teammates. And it is, it's unexpected, and I was obviously there living it through them. I'm an emotional guy. I think I was probably more upset than Tyson, but when you think you're building something in a city like that, and running the power play, and then all of a sudden in 30 seconds you get traded. But he's happy in Nashville now. The weather's a lot better, and he's settled, and they're pushing to get in the playoffs there. So it's part of it. It's Tyson's 4th team in his career, but the other one was a trade in the offseason. So this was just hurry up and go, and in the lineup the next night in South Florida playing for the Nashville Predators. His gear didn't arrive until right before puck drop, and yeah, as you know, it can flip upside down pretty quick in a trade.
It's amazing how many things instantly go through your trade or go through your mind when you've been told you've been traded. Everybody always asks who for. Like when you get traded, who'd I get traded for? Really, it doesn't matter. They don't want you anymore, so they could have traded you for a statue. You got to go. And what I remember is packing and getting to the next city, Bane, and not knowing when I opened up my suitcase what I had.
Yeah.
Like I just packed it, but I had no idea what was in it.
That was because like Tyson. You had to join them. You had to join them for a 2-week road trip.
Yeah.
So he didn't even get to Nashville. So he was went to Florida, Chicago, LA, Vancouver. Like it was, in limbo. It's not like you fly right to the city. They want you playing in the lineup. So, it was interesting. That's for sure.
What's the agent's business like when you're right in it, as opposed to on the fringes when you decided to move into it?
Like, what's the biggest thing that I didn't expect?
Yeah. Like, what have you learned? What have you gone, oh my gosh, like that was way different.
Sports psychology.
Really?
Yeah, you need to just listen a lot of the time. These players have a lot of voices in their ear, whether it's coaches, management, wives, family, whatever, dads. sometimes they phone and it's just, hey, what am I doing here? You know, I've had conversations with clients about, you know, they play a bad night, it's about retirement. They play a great night, it's about extension. You get a phone call and it's like, okay, what fire are we putting out today? You know, and that's sometimes I didn't realize the mental side of it, of just, you know, almost like a calming influence, you know, and helping people on the human side. I'm not going to teach Tyson Barrie or Jamie Benn how to be better at hockey. Let's be honest here, you know, and they said, if I ever do that, then, you know, they'll be looking for a new agent. But, you know, like I do help them on the mental side of things, assisting on a concierge, assisting, hey, you on a vacation. It's much more than just watching their games and, you know, critiquing it. And then like out here in Ontario, we just got through the OHL trade deadline, right? So everyone forgets I've got, you know, junior prospects. I've got minor hockey clients, you know, so we're in OHL playoffs start this week. And GTHL, OHL Cup. You know, I'm going to a game tomorrow at 10:30 at Scotia Pond to watch a minor midget game. And it's, you know, you got to keep feeding the well and recruiting. And in a hockey hotbed like Toronto, there's enough agents out here. We're just trying to find the right players. So it's super competitive market, but it's fun. I mean, I get to be like you guys. I get to be around the game, you know, and you know, mix and mingle and have a great, you know, career by really not being on the ice. When I retired at 18 from playing junior B, I didn't think I'd be, you know, on a podcast with you
Did they
guys.
have a night for? Did they have a night for you? Did they retire you?
No. Jersey's still up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Well, you're one of the good ones, Boehner. Thanks for doing this today.
Yeah,
Thanks for being so honest.
One quick one. I remember from my from the World Juniors that you guys, or World Championships that we've done together, one of my scariest moments at Hockey Canada, I think it was 2017. We came out for warm-ups versus the quarterfinals. You'll remember this one, Ray.
Yeah, oh,
and
yeah.
I stand on the bench, and Ray looks at me and goes, "There's a lot of red in the building tonight." And I was like, "Yeah, it's a home game. We're World Juniors." And I look, checks are in red, and we're in red. And I go, "Oh no!" Well, I
40 guys skating.
I run back into the locker room and I checked with our equipment manager, and we were supposed to be white. So I'm like, oh boy. So I've got like everyone, you know, blowing down my neck on how'd you screw this up? Like I'm a team service guy and we're both wearing red for warm up. I'm like, then we had players go in the back and they said, do we have to switch? Can we just switch to just white jerseys and like white socks? I'm like, no, we have to switch the entire thing. This is a quarterfinal of the World Juniors.
Yeah.
Oh no.
That was a tense game that I watched with the video coach in the bowels of the Bell Center, because if we lost that one and it was my fault for distraction, I may have been looking for new work.
Awesome stuff, Bane. Thanks as always for joining us, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Bane.